All right, so we're doing Parshas Vayigash, and you can find it in this Chumash on 250 and 251. And where we are, of course, is just to bring you up to in the story, is that the brothers have come down to Egypt in order to get food because they're starving in Israel, right? In Canaan, they're starving, so they come down to buy food. They have this crazy thing going back and forth with the guy in charge of the food, which is, of course, Yosef, which they don't realize is Yosef. And so they don't know what's going on. Finally, Yosef sort of tricks them into getting him to be able to take the youngest brother, Binyamin, who is the only full brother of Yosef. Right? He's his full brother, right? So he convinces them. Now he takes the youngest brother away, and he tells them, you know, if you want him back, you got to go get your father, come back down here, and prove to me that you're not thieves and spies, right? So now the brothers are really upset because the father made them promise that if you take the youngest brother, that you're going to take care of him. And now he got taken by this monarch, by this Idi Amin, for all they know, right? And so Yehuda, who is, in our understanding, we find out later on, but Yehuda represents the military, the kings right, of Israel in the future. So here he acts like the king. So he's not going to allow Yosef to take the youngest brother, and he puts a stand. He basically says, you know, I'm coming in. You think you're in charge? He tells Yosef. He says, well, you're a king. I'm a king. I'm the king of the Jews. You're the king of Egypt. You want to start up with us, you're not going to be happy. We want our brother back or else. Right? That's right where we are. And that's what that line opens the Parsha. And it says, Vayigash alav Yehuda. And Yehuda came close to him, V'yomar, and he said to him, Be'adoni. He says, please, my master, Yidaber na avdecha davar be'oznei Adoni. Listen now to the words that your servant says in the ears of my master. V'al yachar apcha be'avdecha. Do not become angry at your servant, ki kamocha kafaro, because you are to me like Pharaoh. So in one way you read this is that Yehuda is making a last plea to Yosef. Right? He gets close to him. He's speaking directly into his ear. In other words, he's being intimate. Right? Up until now, their understanding was that Yosef doesn't speak Hebrew. He's not Yosef. He's an Egyptian. And they speak Hebrew among themselves. And they don't realize that he understands them. So finally, Yehuda gets so frustrated that he doesn't go through the interpreter, the translator, because they would say to the translator, right, please tell, quite all right, please tell the master that we want to buy some food. So the translator would translate the Hebrew to Egyptian, and then Yosef, under the guise of being the master, will then tell him in Egyptian, will translate the Hebrew and tell it to them. Suddenly, Yehuda now gets so upset, right? He's so upset by the fact that Yosef, who is now just like Paro, has taken away the youngest brother, that he's not going to play diplomacy anymore. He's not talking through the interpreter, even though he has no reason to think that Yosef understands him. He feels he'll understand his message, the emotion of what he's saying. So he's going to speak right into his ear. So he goes right into his ears, and he speaks politely. He says, you're in charge here. I realize that, but I want to tell you something very strongly. That I need you to listen to me. And he says, on the one level, it's saying, I'm treating you with a lot of respect. He says, why? Because you're like Pharaoh to me. In other words, what is your job? You are here standing in the role of Pharaoh. That's what you do. You stand in Pharaoh's place. So you're like Pharaoh. That's on one level. On another level, they're saying that Yehuda is not being polite here. He's speaking in polite words because that's how a person should speak. A person should speak in a sophisticated way. We don't talk like truck drivers. But you should. But he's telling him, you're going to better do what I say, because to me, you're no better than Pharaoh. Yeah, Pharaoh is right. I'm taking on Pharaoh. I'll take on you. Pharaoh is of no. I have no fear of Pharaoh. I have no fear of you. Right. That's the second way of looking at it. One is that he's saying, I respect you like I respect Pharaoh, because you're speaking here on behalf of Pharaoh. So of course I'm treating you respectfully. And the other one is, I don't have respect for Pharaoh, I don't have respect for you. Who do you think? I'm going to respect you and not Pharaoh? I don't respect Pharaoh, I don't respect you. So it depends how you read it. One is that he's speaking harshly, and one is speaking kindly. But in any case, he's sending the following message. And he says, Adoni shalas avadav liomer hayesh lechem av or ach. So now he goes and he tells the story. He says, my Lord asked his servants, do you have a father or a brother? And we said to the Lord, we have an old father and a young child of his age. So he's telling him back the whole story. Right? Yosef knows the story. He's in the story. Right? So he told old age, his brother's dead, he's left with his mother, his father loves him, and you said, bring him down. Right? And now we say to you, the youth cannot leave his father. Right? We said to you then, if Benjamin does not come back with us, his father will die. And you say that if you don't bring your brother down to me, you're not getting any food. Right? You're in trouble. So now the guy, he takes Benjamin, right? And Yehuda's saying, you're putting us in a situation where we're stuck. You're putting us in the middle here. Our father wants his son back. We only bring the son down here because you have to see him for some reason. All right? But we better bring him back. And you promised us safe passage that he'd be able to come back. And now you're taking him. Right? Now you're declaring war on us. Right? So listen to the story. What happened to Yosef? Yosef was the son of Yaakov, right? The brothers sell him to get rid of him, right? They don't help him. They don't defend him. They don't wonder where he is. They don't care about him, nothing. So Yosef wants to know, have my brothers learned their lesson? Are they still the crass, difficult, uncaring people that sold me? Or have they learned?
Conscience.
Right? Have they learned? So he says, what I'm going to do to them is what they did to me. They took me and got rid of me, and they didn't care how their father felt. They didn't care how I felt. They didn't care how my family and anyone else felt. They only cared about themselves. I'm going to take Binyamin now, and I'm going to see how they're going to react. If they're the same people, they're going to say, okay, you take them, what do we care? Just give us our food, and we're getting out of here. But if they've changed, they're going to stand up to me, right? Because they care. So that's really what we hear here. So he says, then he says, we went up to your servant, my father. We told him what you said, right? And my father said, go back down with the food. But we said, you can't go down unless we bring the brother. So father says, okay, you can bring the brother, but if you don't bring back my youngest son, I'm going to die. So, right? And he says, one has left me, and I presume the last he's been torn to pieces. Yaakov says, my other son from his mother, there's only two sons to this mother from Rachel. Yosef, I guess he's dead. But you're not taking my other one. You do that, and I'm just going to die. I can't live. You can't do that to me. So they took him down with a complete assurance they're going to bring him back. And now, at the bottom of the page, it says, now, if I go back to my father and I don't have that boy with me, right, it'll happen that when he sees the boy's missing, he will die. And we'll have brought down the death of our father to the grave. So we took responsibility for him, and we want him back. Right? That's the end. That's Yehuda. Now this is, I find that this, when you read this section, is an extremely emotional section. Because you can see here, you've got a clash of titans, like these two superheroes. You've got Yosef, who is masquerading as an evil dictator, right? Who has the power of the world behind him, right? He's got all the food in the whole world. Everyone's got to go to him for food, right? And he's making Pharaoh rich this way. And in comes his own brothers, right? And his brothers have been promised by God, they're going to be a powerful nation. So the brother who's in charge of that group, Yehuda, he's a king. And he's standing up to the other king, right? And he's telling him, you can't push us around. We're not a bunch of losers. I'm the king. You're a king. Right? You want to go to war, we'll go to war. I'll kill you right now. Right? Yehuda's threatening his life. You don't give me back my brother. Because you promised us safe passage. You're taking away my brother. You put me in a situation now that my father is going to die because of our actions. I'm not going to let that happen. That's where it is, and it stops. Now you have this palace, right? You can imagine this palace filled with all of the people who work for Yosef, work for the Pharaoh, all of the servants, all of the guards. They're all there hearing this, right? Even though Yehuda very clearly whispers these words to Yosef, everyone can see that we've got a major confrontation here. This is a political world war about to happen between these two. So now what does Yosef do? The ball's in his court. Does he stand up to Yehuda? Does he give in to Yehuda? What does he do? So it begins in the beginning of the next chapter. Now Yosef could not restrain himself in the presence of all who stood before him. So here he can't hold himself back. He sees the answer to his question. How are my brothers going to act? Have they learned their lesson? Are they still going to just only care about themselves? Or are they prepared to fight for their brother? And he sees that they've changed. So Yosef now can't hold himself back. He says, remove everyone from here. Get rid of all the servants. I want every Egyptian out of the room. Right? Something's going to happen in here. Now, on the one hand, the Egyptians think, well, he wants out of the room because there's going to be a war. He doesn't want us to get hurt. He represents us. He's like Pharaoh. So they all leave. Now you have Yosef only with his brothers. So it says, no one remained with him, and Yosef made himself known to his brothers. And he cries in a loud voice after he does this. Right? He says, I'm Yosef, he tells them. I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? And in that, when he says this, it was such an emotional statement that the servants and everybody who's either hiding or in the next room, they hear it. They realize this is not a war. This mysterious man who shows up in our country, who's like the savior of our country, he comes in, he changes the entire economy of Egypt. He makes us the most powerful nation in the world, has just told us who he is. We now know who he is. He's a Hebrew. He comes from, and these are his brothers, right? Because he just tells his brothers, and they can hear it. And it says, and all of Pharaoh's house heard, and Pharaoh's household heard everything. And Joseph says, I'm Joseph, is my father alive? Now this, right away, is a problem. He says, I am Joseph, is an important statement. But why does he say, is my father still alive? Yehuda just gave him a whole story about it. If you don't come back with my brother, my father will die. So is his father alive or dead? Of course he's alive. How can he die if he's not alive? Why does Yosef ask him that ridiculous question? So it's a rhetorical question. Because Yosef is now saying back to his brother, you want to tell me that if you don't... Right, remember first, the first priority, started over again, is that he wants to see if his brothers have changed. He sees they have. But now he has to teach them a lesson. Yeah, they have to realize what they did. So he says, I'm Yosef. Is my father still alive? Well, why is that question pertinent? Because you told me that if my brother Reuven, right, Binyamin, is not brought back, my father will die. You didn't bring me back. Did my father die? Did you care what you would do to my father? Did you have any feelings at all? What you were going to do to my father when you sent me away? You knew I was my father's favorite. I was the only child from Rachel at that point, the only boy from Rachel. You don't think that my father cared? You know he loved me. You know he treated me special. Okay, you didn't like it, but you didn't care about my father? You don't care what happens to him? Now, what about our father? What about our father? He's going to die if we don't bring back Yeoman. Yeah, he didn't die when you did it to me. So he's teaching them a lesson. It's a very pertinent question. It's a rhetorical question. He knows the answer. He's trying to tell his brothers. And what do they say? But his brothers could not answer him because they were left disconcerted before him. They were humiliated. They were embarrassed. Right? So there's a lot of important statements here. The first thing is, this idea of him saying, Ani Yosef, is extremely important. Because what's happened until now is this story that Yehuda just said. As I told you, what's Yehuda telling the story for? Yosef was present. Yosef knows exactly what happened, right? So why does Yehuda now go to Yosef and say, listen, you brought us, we came down here to buy food. You said we were spies. We bought some food. You gave us back our money. You then get us arrested. Then we go back to our father. You tell us we have to bring back our brother. We bring back our brother. Again, you give us back our money. You treat our brother funny. You know how old we are. You know all our names. We have no idea how you know all of these things. You know, you're a pagan king, and you're acting like you've got knowledge about us. You call us spies, and nobody else gets called spies. We haven't done anything wrong. None of this is making sense to us. Right? This is all insane. It's absurd. We came down to buy food. Sell this food and let us go home. Why are you doing this? Right? It makes no sense. The whole story. And so Yehuda is saying it back to Yosef, like, why are you acting like this? This is a business deal. Take our money, give us our food, let us go home. But you want us to eat with you, and yet you call us spies. You want us to be alone with you, and yet you're afraid for your life. You sit us around a table by age. How do you know how old we are? They're from 4 different mothers. They could be born within weeks of each other. How would he know that? So the bottom line is, what's happening is that Yehuda is telling Yosef, I don't understand what's going on here. You want to fight us? Is that what it is? You want to take us on? You want to push us until we fight back? I'm going to kill you. Yehuda's saying, I've got the power of God on my side. I'll just wipe you out. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? So Yosef answers the question. I am Yosef. And as soon as he says that, everything makes sense. Now the brothers say, now we know how he knew who we were. Now I know how he knows how old we are. Now he recognizes us. Now I know why he treated us this way. He was trying to teach us a lesson. We know why he cared about our father. Why did he want to see the little brother? Because it's his only brother. Now it all makes sense. All of the craziness of life now makes sense. All of these things are, right? And now what's interesting is if you look in the Haftorah for this week, you have to understand first what a Haftorah is. A Haftorah, many people very wrongly think is the time to go out and take a break. Like all these guys decide during Haftorah they're going to go out and have a drink. Right? It's totally inappropriate and wrong to do, but people do it. In every shul I've ever been in, they think the Haftorah is superfluous. It's the time for the break. So Haftorah is anything but superfluous. Haftorahs began centuries ago when it was against the law for Jews to read the Torah in public. The governments would, probably rightfully so, understood the Torah to be a book of law. A lot of the Torah is law. And if we take over the Jewish people, we don't want them practicing their own law in our country. We don't want them practicing a different religion in our country. This is our country. We conquered you. You're not our friends. You're our servants. You're our subjects. You don't own us. We own you. You follow our rules. So you want to get together? We don't want no public reading of another nation. No Torah reading. So the rabbis understood. So they decided we can't read the Torah or they'll kill us. But we can read the prophets. They didn't say you can't read the prophets because the prophets are stories, they thought. So the rabbis went through the prophets and they found stories in the prophets that would remind you about what the Torah is talking about in that week's parsha. So you have the parsha of Noah, and the section in the prophets talks about a flood. You have the parshas of Bereshis, right? And you have a similar concept elsewhere. Then you have it has all about the angels and mysticism. The last one the last parsha in the Torah is the first section of the prophets to show you how it continues. Everything comes to remind you of something. So this parsha that we have talks about in the end of days, when it's right before the Mashiach comes, that the world, right, will be living like the world is now, has its own countries, moral, immoral, right, wrong, up and down, and it's our job as Jews to have a life where we influence the world to be moral. Sometimes we do it, sometimes we're not so good at it, but that's our job. And when we're not so good at it, for whatever reason, a thing pops up in the world called anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is the most absurd form of hatred. It's like, let's just modernize it to Israel. You have all these people that consider the state of Israel to be an apartheid state. It's a horrible place. It's a place that has no human rights. They have all types of stories about Israel, which we know, not we believe, we know is not accurate. Right? It's absurd. The only country that has the freedom for a person of another religion to practice their religion is Israel. The only country where a person who lives a lifestyle that even goes against our beliefs and can live freely is Israel. The only place where you can have religious institutions of another religion in the Middle East freely is Israel. Right? The only place that's close to a democracy that keeps human rights is Israel. So why do they say just the opposite about it? It's absurd, right? It's not logical. You want to tell me you want to attack the Jews? Tell me they're white-collar criminals. I'm sorry to say, there are white-collar criminals. You don't find too many, violent criminals among the Jews. But white-collar criminals in this era, you do find that it's an embarrassment, and it's horrible, and it shouldn't happen. But if you wanted to tell me that you didn't want to trust Jews working in a bank, I can see that that's not an absurd hatred. It's wrong, but it's not absurd. But if you want to tell me the Jews, on the one hand, own everything, on the other hand, they steal everything, on the one hand, we are, the communists hate us, and the fascists hate us. The fascists say we're communists, the communists say we're fascists, right? The liberals say we're conservative, the conservatives say we're liberal. Whatever it is, we're the opposite. It's totally absurd, right? That's what these brothers were living through. It was totally absurd. They're coming down, peaceful people, just like us. We want to come to Canada. We don't want to take over Canada. We don't want to kill the Christian society. We want to live here in peace, right? That's all. And yet people start up with us, right? These brothers say, we come down to Egypt. We bring our money. We treat people with respect. We want to buy some food. And you treat us crazy. Crazy. We can't understand it. Everyone else is not crazy. Just us you treat crazy. That's anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is crazy. And that's because anti-Semitism is a message from God. God is telling us, fix what you're doing. Because I'm going to show you that people are going to treat you badly if you don't start fixing things up. You want to say, oh, no, they won't treat us badly. We're part of society. We're part of the government. We're citizens. Yeah, well, tomorrow you won't be. Like I have it in my office. I could have brought it in to show you, but I went back to my hometown a while ago, and I brought back my grandmother and mother's passport from before the war. They were in Germany. They were Germans. And the passport, right, has a big Nazi sign on it, and it says, stateless. They took away their citizenship. And it had a big J on it, and they changed their names. Like my mother's name was Doris Rosa Strauss. They changed it to Doris Sarah Strauss. My grandmother was Johanna Strauss, and they changed it to Johanna Sarah Strauss, because all Jewish women had to be named Sarah. All Jewish men were usually Solomon. There were a couple of names the men had, Abraham also. Like I had an Uncle Solly. That wasn't his real name. It was just the Nazis gave it to him, and he lived that way. Right? That was part of what they did. Right? My mother's family lived in Germany for 1,000 years. They traced them back to 1,000 years, right? And yet, they were treated like strangers, like criminals. My grandfather had business, right? He had friends who weren't Jewish. They played cards. They got along with each other. And one of the same friends that did that, right, attacked my grandmother after Kristallnacht. And eventually, they had to leave the country, right? It's absurd. My grandparents were German citizens. They were loyal Germans. My grandmother's brother died fighting for Germany in World War I. But they were, and yet suddenly it all turns upside down. It's not like Poland, where they were all anti-Semites in many cases for a long time, or Hungary, or other countries where Germany is the one place in the world where you would never think there would be a Holocaust, because German Jews had total freedom. You know what the biggest problem was for Jews in Germany? Intermarriage. They were intermarrying. Right? Yeah, what kind of a country hates Jews and lets them intermarry their daughters? Right? And only a country where they treated Jews civilly. They treated Jews like citizens, just like we are here. And that was the country it began. Why? Because it was absurd. If it started in Poland, we'd say it's natural. You give him a gun, he's going to kill a Jew. But in Germany, it wasn't that way. And so God picked Germany to be the place, just like here. So the Haftorah says that in the world is running, and it's crazy what's going on. They treat the Jews badly in the liberal countries. They treat the Jews badly in the right-wing countries. They treat the Jews badly in the dictatorships. They treat them badly in the communists. They treat them badly everywhere, right? Why? What did we do so bad that people treat us like this? Why do they go and say these things about the state of Israel? Like, you imagine if Canada would go and actually follow the boycott, right, BDS group, right? Do they follow them? Just the medical technology that they would not be able to use? You imagine all the medical technology that came out of Israel? All of the other science? How about our iPhones? and Google and all of these things that are coming out of Israel, you wouldn't be able to use, right? So why do they do it? Because it's absurd. So in the Haftorah, it says how all the nations are doing this, and then finally God comes and he reveals it. He says, I am God. It's this week's Haftorah. He says, I am God. And suddenly, everything makes sense. God reveals himself to the world, and it makes sense. God did this over here and did this over here so the Jews should act correctly. He did that and that and that, so we should act correctly. We're not acting correctly, so these things happen. I know it sounds simplistic. It's not simplistic. But give me a different answer. The question of why the Jews cannot be a normal question. Why would you single out Israel, which is the most fair, safe place to be in the Mideast, as being the worst? And even if you wanted to say it's the worst, I'm sure they do things that are wrong too. But even when to say it's the worst, what about the other terrible places in the world? Nobody thinks about them. It doesn't make it right if you would think Israel's bad. But the world is not acting in a normative way. In a normative way, you want to take care of people who are being persecuted. So then take a look at any Arab country, see who's persecuted. Go into Africa, see who's persecuted. Go into South America and see who's persecuted. People are persecuted in different parts of the world. They're being killed. Right? Go to the Philippines and look what's going on. All over the world. In Syria, why don't we have these resolutions about Syria? People being their heads cut off because they're walking down the street. Right? Because it's absurd. So the Haftorah says, when God says, I am God, it makes total sense. Just like here, Yosef says, I am Yosef. He's symbolizing that same idea. Suddenly, everything makes sense to the brothers. And the brothers are now so frightened because Yosef has the power of life and death in his hand. He can kill them, and there's nothing they can do. So they're silent. That's what it says. The brothers have nothing to say, right? Nothing. And Yosef realizes it. Let's give you another point on the side. Yosef, right, realizes what's going on. Yehuda now has the ability to harm Yosef, physically harm him. He's right in his face, right? He doesn't know who Yosef is. He thinks this man is taking my younger brother, and I'm going to take care of my younger brother and take care of my father. I'm not going to let him do this. I'm not the same person in the story of Yosef. I'm a different person now. I'm going to do this. He doesn't know this is Yosef, right? Yosef then tells everyone, including his guards, leave the room. That's a stupid thing to do. You've got these people threatening you. Right? They're strangers. They're threatening you. And you tell your guards to leave the room? Yehuda doesn't know you're Yosef. He thinks you're a stranger. He'll kill you. Right? Teguh is right. Why does he do that? Why does he empty the room? So the answer is an amazing answer. And it teaches us a very important point, which is there's a different. Yosef knew he was going to reveal himself. When he reveals himself, he knew his brothers would be humiliated. Because this man who's standing in front of them was the one that they hated so much they wanted to kill him. And now he has the power to kill you. He has the power to take care of you. He has the power to help you. You're asking him for help, and you wanted to kill him. Right? The brothers are totally humiliated. I mean, we can't even imagine how humiliating this is. Yosef could have said, I'm worried to be alone with them and leave everybody in the room. But Yosef understood that to humiliate his brothers in public is worse, right, than the chance that they kill me. They kill him. In other words, it's worth taking the chance that they might kill me to save his brothers from humiliation, even if they deserved it, even though they deserved it, right? And this is where we get the idea that to humiliate a person in public, to embarrass someone in public, is like killing them. Because here you see Yosef is equating that my life, right, is what it is, only, right, he's equating it. My life is only what it is. I'm ready to stand up and lose my life rather than humiliate them. And therefore we understand in our lives, when we have that we have times when it's justified to tell someone they're doing something wrong. Somebody has injured you. Somebody has insulted you. You may not want to stand up to them, but you're justified to do so if you want to, and you can. But don't think that we have license to do whatever we want. Right? The Torah talks all the time about how to act when you've done something wrong. One thing that the Torah is telling us here is how do you act when you've done something right? And very often we act worse when we're right and when we're wrong. We suddenly have this righteous indignation. You know, somebody cuts us off in traffic, we'll honk at them for 5 minutes. Like, a horn is not a weapon. A horn is to warn someone from getting hurt, right? You don't honk at someone for 5 minutes after they cut you off. You don't go up and, you know, swear at them or chase them around, right? That's not what one does. This idea of humiliating somebody, right, humiliating a person, is extremely serious. Right, to embarrass someone in public is a horrible thing. So the Torah is teaching us through Yosef's action that even if it means that you could be put into harm, you have to go out of your way to make sure that you don't hurt, that you don't hurt somebody else through humiliating them. Now, it doesn't mean that you should actually physically put yourself in harm. Right? It's telling you how serious it is. Right? That's the point. I read a story recently about a teacher who was having a problem with his class. They weren't listening to him. They were acting up. As kids will do, right? So he tells the kids, you know, I'm going to write down the name of every one of you who doesn't listen, and each one of you is going to get in trouble. After class, you're going to have a problem. You're going to be in trouble. So he writes down their names. And as he's done writing the names, the principal comes into the room unexpectedly, and he wants to see what's going on. He doesn't know that there was a problem in the class. He's just being the principal. So as the principal is addressing the class and watching the class, the teacher is leaning against the blackboard, wiping the chalk with his jacket off the blackboard. It looks like he's just dancing around, like he's nervous. Well, what is he really doing? He's erasing the names of all the boys who were in trouble so that the principal shouldn't see it. Why would he do that? The boys are going to be punished. They did act wrong. But he felt, why should I humiliate them in front of the principal? They didn't do that. I didn't send them to the principal. I didn't want them. They weren't that bad that they have to have that level. So So he went and said, I'd rather dry clean my jacket from the chalk than get them in trouble. So that's a practical application of this concept, right? Then you have to make a point. And another one is interesting is that it applies to our family also. Right? Very often, parents, right, likes to tell stories about their kids when they were little. You know, I remember my son, he did this, this, and this, and how funny it was, and my daughter did this, and how funny that is. But we don't realize that in some of those things that we say are humiliating to them. Even if they were 5 years old, they don't remember, right? Just like we were humiliated. And we know that our parents didn't mean it, but it does it, right? In other words, the laws of Lashon Hora, the laws of embarrassing, apply to our children also. And even though we mean well, none of us are trying to humiliate our children. We think it's a cute story. And for us, we know immediately that my 35-year-old son, right, is not, there's no connection between him and what he was like when he was 5. The fact that he would, I don't know, walk around without any clothes on when he was 5, he's not the same person now that he's 35. I know that, so I don't feel like I'm embarrassing a 35-year-old when I tell the story. But the 35-year-old is embarrassed. It's true. We were embarrassed when our parents did it to us. It's the same kind of thing, right? When we tell these stories or when we act, we have to make sure that we don't humiliate people as we see here. But what we have seen is, going back to the first idea, was the fact is how the revelation of God ultimately is together with the revelation of Yosef. It makes sense. Suddenly life makes sense. Suddenly all of the torture and the problems and the pain we went through makes sense. We now understand it. God has lifted that veil when he reveals who he is and the Messiah finally comes. So that's really a big part of that story. Now, there's a lot more in here, but he finally he's finally letting them go, and he gets to now meet Binyamin. Yosef now meets the youngest brother, his only full brother, and that's here on 255. And he says in verse 12, "Behold, your eyes see, as the eyes of my brother Benjamin, that it is my mouth that is speaking to you. Therefore, tell my father of all my glory in Egypt and all that you saw, but you must hurry and bring my father down." Right? Then he falls upon his brother Benjamin's neck, and he weeps. And Benjamin weeps on his neck. He then kisses his brothers. They all cry together, and they leave. Right? The brothers leave to go get Yaakov to come down. But what's happened here is a couple of things that are interesting. Mostly is, what is this idea that Binyamin and Yosef, of course, they're full brothers, right? They look alike. That's why he says, "You see my eyes like my eyes of my brother Binyamin." We look alike, right? They're even though Yosef was a man with a beard and Binyamin was a young adolescent, still they looked alike. So and then it says that Binyamin and Yosef hug each other. A special line of the Torah that says this, because the next line says they all did it, but they do it. Binyamin cries on the neck of Yosef, and Yosef cries on the neck of Binyamin, right? So it's showing their special relationship. But Rashi says, what were they crying about? Of course they're crying. They met each other. They're crying. They left each other. But really, on a deeper sense, what are they crying about?
Sorry, Rabbi, you say Binyamin was an adolescent. According to commentary here, the question arises, Binyamin had 10 children at home.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't Yehuda mention the grief that Binyamin's children would experience at their father's absence? So surely he had to be man.
Yeah, so he was much younger. Well, he could have been even younger. We don't know exactly, but what I mean is that Yosef had not been seen since he was a child, since he couldn't grow a beard. That's why they didn't recognize him, because he had a beard. Binyamin wasn't even born yet, right?
Yeah, sure.
So you're dealing with a child. He's a man-child, but to Yosef, he's a child. So he's going on then, and why are they weeping like this? So Rashi says that in the future, the temples of Israel, we have the Mishkan and the Mikdash, the portable temple and the temple. So it says that one of them would be in the section of Binyamin and one would be in the section of Joseph, and they were both destroyed. And Yosef was crying for the temple in Binyamin's area by crying on Binyamin's shoulder, and Binyamin was crying for the temple that was in Yosef's, or the Mishkan that was in Yosef's area. They both cried over each one. So, like, what's Rashi getting at? Like, what's this got to do with our story? Where's this coming from? Right? So we have to understand, why was the temple destroyed? We know that ultimately the dispersion we're in now, the temple was destroyed because of hatred. Jews were fighting with each other. Jews were not respecting each other. Jews weren't treating each other well. And how did they get into this situation with Binyamin and Yosef not meeting until they were adults? Because of hatred. Because the brothers, excluding Binyamin, who wasn't around, hated Yosef. They hated him. They wanted to kill him. Because of that hatred, Yosef never meets Binyamin. Right? It's over now. They made peace. Right? At least it appears they make peace. But Yosef and Binyamin realize that peace is not real, because they're going to be fighting among the Jews all the way until the times of the temple. The temple will be destroyed because Jews fight. Just like we're fighting now, the fighting's not over. It's continuing. And they cry over the fact that while we appear to have peace, we haven't really made peace to the point where Jews are not going to do this again. They're going to continue to do this. So they cried over the future destruction, because the reason the destruction was the same as the reason that Yosef and Binyamin meet now. Right? That was why. So there was that problem there. So now it says that Pharaoh tells Joseph, send your brothers back, send all of the stuff, no problem, they should go back, right? And it gives them all of these things. So it says the sons of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them the wagons from Pharaoh, and he gave them provisions, and each one took clothes and money and all types of things. Right? And Joseph sends things back for his father, and on they go. And they went up from Egypt to the land where Jacob was, and they tell him that Joseph is still alive, and he's the ruler of the land of Egypt. Right? It says Yaakov didn't believe them. My brothers, you tell me he's dead all these years. Now you tell me he's alive. Not only he's alive, he's the king of the world. What do you mean? It's like, can you imagine a kid disappears, and then his brother and the brothers come in and say, 20 years later, tell the father, you know what? Our brother's not dead. I know we told you he was dead. I know we showed you he was dead, but he's not dead. Not only that, he's the president of the United States. Right? Oh, come on. The president of the United States. He had no parents to raise him. He had no money. He had no nothing. How did he do that? Guys, you probably lied to me about him being dead. You're certainly lying to me about him being alive. That's crazy, right? He doesn't believe them. And so he rejects it. But then it says they related to him all the words that Joseph had spoken, and he saw the wagons that Joseph sent, and he was revived. What changed? Because then he says, how great, my son Joseph's alive. I'm going to go and see him before I die. Well, what changed his mind? He didn't believe him. Then he hears what Joseph said. They could make it up. And he sees the wagons. Like, so what? Who cares? Why does that change his mind? So the commentaries tell us, because and you see it in Rashi, the word in Hebrew for wagon is agalah. That's what a wagon is, right, even in modern Hebrew. The word there's another word that is spelled with the same letters in the same order that has a totally different meaning, and the vowels are different, and that's eglah. Agalah and eglah. Sounds the same, right? Mm. Because the vowels are different. Eglah is a 1-year-old cow. And there's a ritual in the Torah called the Eglah Arufa, where if you have two cities, and people are walking between two cities, it's dangerous in between the cities. You have what they used to call highwaymen, right? Criminals who would live in between the cities, and when a person was going to go do business in another city or move to another city, they'd rob them on the road, because you had nobody to take care of you. There's no police, nobody on the highway, right? So you could kill them and take all their stuff. So it says that if you had two cities and a Jewish guy leaves from one city to go to the other city, and he's found dead on the road, so the Jews of the two cities feel responsible. There's a responsibility for him. And therefore, they measure where the body is, and whichever city the body is closer to has to perform a ritual called the Eglah Rufa, which is where they take this calf and they offer it as a sacrifice, and they say, our hands had nothing to do with the death of this person. We feel responsibility that he died after he left us or on his way to us, but our hands are clean. We didn't do anything wrong. And they wash their hands. That's where the idea of, you hear later with the story of Jesus, where Pontius Pilate washed his hands of the whole thing. We have an expression, I wash my hands of it. That's the same thing here. This is where it comes from. They washed his hands. It means that we have nothing to do with this.
You wash as we leave the cemetery.
Yeah, it's a different reason, but same idea. So what is happening is the story of the Eglah Rufa, right, as I said, why would it happen that somebody would die when they leave your city? It's because you didn't take care of them, right? So we have a rule that came from Abraham. Abraham teaches us that the Jews have a number of things that we should do, but there's 3 things ingrained in our DNA. That is that when anyone comes to visit us, anybody needs a place, we give them a place to sleep, a place to eat, and we accompany them as they leave. And according to the Gemara, accompanying a guest is the most important of the 3. Because if you give someone something to eat or drink, they come to your house, they need a place to stay, they need something to eat, you don't even know them. So a Jew takes them in, another Jew, you take them in. Right? What do you ask? They say, how long are you staying? So to the guest, that means you don't really want me here. You just want to know how long I'm staying. Like, I remember, like, when my parents would come to visit me, I would ask them, how long are you staying? And they'd get upset. So, what are you upset about? I just want to know how long you're staying. No, you want to know how fast can we leave? I said, no, I want you to stay. How long are you staying? Right? But I know that's what it means to people. That's what they're hearing, right? So you stop asking that question, right? So when you feed somebody or you give them a place to stay, like, you're not an animal. Of course you're going to do that. You want someone to starve? Even if you don't know them, you're not going to make them starve. You're not going to make them sleep in the cold, right? But that you accompany them on the way is telling them, I don't want you to leave. I want you to know I care about you. I wish you'd stay. I'm going to walk with you as you leave. And we have such a custom that we're supposed to do this today, right? Because they didn't do it. In this case, this guy got killed. If somebody had walked with him, he wouldn't have been killed. He would have had, like, police escort, but he didn't. So we carry some responsibility for that because we didn't do what Jews are supposed to do, right? That's where it comes from. So what's it got to do with this story? Like, who cares? There was this Eglah, this calf, the wagons. Right? How does the wagons convince Yaakov? It says because before Yosef left, the last thing that happens, if you read in the Parsha, Yosef and his father are having a conversation. Yosef asks Yaakov, where's my brothers? Yaakov says, your brothers have gone off in the field. Do me a favor, go check up on them, will you? So he sends Yosef out. So Yaakov, of course, is a Jew. So what does he do? He has to accompany Yosef. Right? He has to accompany him a bit of the way. So Yosef says to his father, you don't have to come with me. You're the father. I'll go. You stay here. Let me do the work. And Yaakov says, no, I have to teach you. This is the way of Abraham. We people stay with us, you feed them, you give them a place to sleep, and you accompany them. Right? If you accompany them, so what was the last thing that Yosef and Yaakov learned together? Was this law of accompanying somebody on the way. So when Yosef sent the wagons to Yaakov, it was a hint. The word agalah, wagon, is the same word as eglah, which is the last thing that Yaakov taught him. So Yaakov then realized it must be Yosef. Yosef is sending a message to me, a hinted message as to who it really is. It's almost like, if you tell your kids, God forbid, before a war, a mother tells her kids, listen, whatever happens to you in your life, I don't know what's going to happen, we're in a war, that it might make you convert, it might make you change, you might forget. I want you to remember this word. Remember the word, I don't know, chocolate ice cream. And if you come up to me in 50 years and we find each other, or in 20 years we find each other, and you're going to look different, I'm going to look different, and you think I might be your parent, say the word. Nobody else will know this word. Say that word. So that's what Yosef and Yaakov are doing. Yosef is saying, here's the word, agalah, wagon, meaning the calf. And so Yaakov, who doesn't believe that Yosef's alive, says, wait a minute, how'd they know the secret? They must have known. How did they know that Yosef and I learned that together? They were away. The only way they would know is Yosef told them. Right? So Yosef hinted it so that his father would realize who it was. And then he says, how great my son is alive. So now he goes with him. Right? And now you have the whole story of who's going to Egypt, down to Egypt, all of the family members who go down. Right? And then it finally says on 261, all of the persons coming with Jacob to Egypt, who they were, and so forth, Joseph's sons who came with them, he sent Yehuda ahead. Joseph harnesses his chariot and went to meet his father in Goshen, Goshen being the place where the Jews lived in Egypt. He appears before him, he falls on his neck, and they were crying. Now, you notice Joseph falls on his father's neck and cries. Yaakov doesn't. It doesn't say anything about Yaakov crying. In other words, Yaakov, who couldn't be consoled about his son being gone for decades, he couldn't be consoled, right? Finds out his son's alive, his most favorite son, the first son from his wife that he loved the most, and he doesn't even cry when he sees him. What's going on? Yosef cries, even though he feels like he was abandoned by his family, but Yaakov doesn't cry. You'd think Yaakov was a caring man. I mean, he loved his son. He missed him. Why doesn't he cry? The Torah tells us all about everyone crying, and it says, he appears before him, he fell on his neck, and he wept. Then Israel says to Joseph, now I can die after seeing your face because you're still alive. That's it. Why doesn't this have any emotion? So Rashi and the Gemara says, because Yaakov was saying the Shema. At the moment that Yosef came, Yaakov was saying the Shema. So couldn't you find a better time to say the Shema? I mean, really. You had 3 hours in the morning to say it. You got all night to say it. I don't know when it was that they see each other, but he could have said the Shema at a different time. He didn't have to wait until he sees his son who hasn't seen for decades, who he loves so much, who he's full of emotion for, and he says the Shema. Timing is everything here. The answer is that it was on purpose. When Yaakov saw Yosef, he was so filled with joy, but he wasn't thankful to Pharaoh for saving his son. He wasn't thankful to Potiphar for saving his son. He was thankful to God for saving his son. So he said Shema. He wanted to show his relationship to God at that moment. He took all of his emotions, all of his tears, all of his feelings, which he had, and he still had for Yosef, but at that moment he wanted to show his gratitude to the one who caused this. So he said Shema. Yosef, on the other hand, was so overcome with the emotion that he just went right to his father. So it wasn't that Yaakov didn't care. You see, he says, I'm so glad to see you. You know what? I could die right now. There's no reason. I got everything I need. My life would be complete if I died right now. Right? That's how he feels. And yet, and you see the difference in how they respond. We have now a whole section we don't have time to go into, but we have at the bottom of 263, Yosef brings his father Jacob, who is the king of the Jews, right, to Pharaoh, who is the king of the world, other than the Hebrews. Like he's the most powerful man. And it's interesting is what Pharaoh says to Jacob. You imagine now, Yosef saved Pharaoh's skin, right? Pharaoh, according to what Pharaoh's dreams were, Egypt was going down. It was going to no longer be a great nation. In comes Yosef. He turns it into the most powerful, affluent nation in the world, right? And now here's the father of Yosef. Pharaoh meets him. Pharaoh knows that Yaakov, Yosef's father, is like a king, just like Pharaoh is. So, if this king's son helped him so much, what would you say to him? What do you say to him when you meet him? He said, well, the Torah says, how old are you? That's what he says. It says right here. First thing, top of 265, Pharaoh says to Jacob, says nothing to him yet. The first thing, how many are the days of the years of your life? How old are you? And Yaakov says back, oh, you want to know? The days of the years of my life have been 130. Few and bad have been the days of my life. And I'm not even as old as my father was. Right? And my life has been so bad. Then Jacob blesses Pharaoh, and he leaves Pharaoh. So Pharaoh says to Jacob, my God, you look old. How old are you? And Yaakov says, oh, you don't know the half of it. My life is so bad. I had, and Rashi explains it, the Gemara says it. You know what my life was? I had my brother Esau try to kill me. I run off to marry a woman. They give me a different one. Her father tricks me and steals from me for 14 years. I have everything I gain, he takes. Now I got 2 wives instead of 1 wife. I get a favorite child from that 1 wife, and he gets taken away. Like, my life has been horrible, right? So this is so weird. Here you've got a king talking to another king. He doesn't say, welcome, doesn't say hello, doesn't say thank you for your son. He says, how old are you? So clearly Pharaoh was shocked when he saw him, because Pharaoh's a diplomat. So he must have been shocked. Like, he walks in, he's ready to do all the diplomacy, and he goes, woo, how old are you? Right? And Yaakov says, you're right, you got a point. I've had a tough life. I look like I've had a tough life. I got Esau chased after me, and this happened to me, and this happened, this and the, and I'm not even as old as my father. So you think I'm bad, right? Look at that. So, interestingly enough, it says that Yaakov's life was cut. He lost, I think it was something like 30 years of his life. I forgot exactly how much, because I didn't prepare this part. And it says that you can tell by going to where Yaakov says, it says, the days of my life have been all this. If you count up all the words, each word shows a year of his life was taken away from him. Because Yaakov's answer was like imagine this, like the greatest Jewish religious leader of the world says, I've had a terrible life. Well, what kind of life did God give me? My brother wants to kill me, this one wants to hurt me, this one. Right? That's not how a Jew talks. Right? I know we have trouble in our life, but I'm a better person because of it. Yaakov is Yaakov because of it. He became the great person he was because of it. Who do you complain into Pharaoh? What are you saying? God gave me a tough, you know what? It's tough to be a Jew. He's telling him. Well, you know what? That's not what you're supposed to say. So God punishes him. By every word he says, he takes away a year. However, if you actually figure it out, the numbers are off. There's not enough words. He lost more years. So it says in the Torah, in the commentary, that you have to start counting not from the beginning of his answer, but from the beginning of the question, where it says, Pharaoh said to Jacob, how many are the days and the years of your life? How old are you? Why? Because not only was Yaakov seemingly inappropriate in the way he answered, it was also in the way he looked. In other words, it wasn't that people age. There's nothing you can do about it. But you have some people who are older, but who don't have the mannerisms of being old. They're young inside. They're young people. Their body's getting older, but they're fun to be with, and they're interesting, and they'll do stuff, and they don't want to just sit around all the time and have people take care of them and complain about their pains and their aches and things. They want to have a life, right? Sure. Well, Yaakov looked like so bad that Pharaoh says, forget diplomacy. Oh man, you must be old, right? That's how bad he looked. So God held that against him too. So that was also wrong. That was a part of it. So not only, we learn from this, not only do we have a responsibility to realize that even when things are bad, that ultimately they're for the good, but we have a responsibility to also have a good disposition about ourselves, to be happy people, to be people that it's a pleasure to be with, that even when things are tough, we know, recently we had a funeral, and one of the people who passed away was, I say this probably not enough, but I feel that my members are like family to me. I care for every one of them. When I have members who are ill and they won't respond to me, it hurts as if I was their father or their brother, and that they're not responding, and I feel bad. When somebody in my family, my members, people who come here, pass away, I feel like I lost a family member. I really do. Like, I know anyone who went to the last funeral, I could hardly speak. When I got up to speak, I just couldn't do it because it was so difficult. And that happens every time to me. It's just sometimes I'm able to hold it in better because I feel that type of relationship to everyone, right? I feel that closeness, and when the people go through these pains, you know that some of the people, they have a zest for life, even if they're dying, even if they're old, even if they've gone through a lot, they've gone through a war. They still are fun to be with, right? And I spoke about it with this last person who passed away, how that person was like that. He was always a pleasure. He didn't feel well. You didn't know it. He didn't tell you. He would tell you the opposite. And you know he's dying. He still wouldn't tell you. And he would talk to you about whatever you want to talk about, and he would give you advice, and he would be fun to be with. And if he was feeling good, he'd want to go shopping with you, and he wanted to do things, right? That Pharaoh saw Yaakov wasn't like that. We have a responsibility to have that type of disposition, to be there for people, right? To care, and ourselves to be positive influences, right? Nobody wants to go visit like their father or their grandfather if every time you go, all he does is complain. Oh, you come now. Where were you last week? Why didn't you call me yesterday? Why didn't you come here? Oh, I don't feel so good anyways. You should have been around. I needed some help getting to the store. No, then, you know what that does? It makes them not call. It makes them not want to come, right? What's going to happen is going to happen. But instead, if you make it that you're warm, you know what? Sure, I'd like you to call me every day, but you call once a week. I'm glad to hear from you. I'm really glad to hear from you. It'll make you want to call twice a week. It'll make you want to go see them. It'll make you want to spend time with them. Right? That's what Yaakov was punished for, because he didn't have that. Right? That's why the kid, everybody kept saying, and he keeps saying about him dying. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I see Yosef. I can die now. And Yehuda says, if I don't bring back my brother Binyamin, my father will die. Right? Like everything is, I'm dying. I don't know what to do with myself. That's what it sounds like. Right? Because Yaakov was in that state of mind, so to speak. You have to realize we can't really put our emotions and our feelings directly on our forefathers. They were much greater people than we can understand. I'm sort of, taking a little bit of poetic license, right, with how I'm expressing it. But it's a good thing for us to learn, right? And that really takes us, right, through the Parsha. Basically, at this point, the Jews go and they are now, this group, right, are now living in Egypt with Yosef. Yosef's still in power. The Jews are still living as Jews. They're still living free. They're still living, keeping Judaism. They're still part of the Jewish community. They all live in one area together. So everything is good. Now, what we're going to start seeing is a lot of the similarities between the Jews of recent history, leaving Eastern Europe after World War I, coming to North America, right, living together, right, having a Jewish life. Some are more religious, some are less religious, and then starting to dissipate. And the Jews, right, it's like it used to be, my father would tell me, it didn't make a difference how Jewish you were as far as your belief. You lived in the Jewish community. All the Jews lived together. You lived in a Jewish area. So, right, and where do they live? Usually near the synagogues. So, right, so now, so theoretically, you might not go to synagogue, but if you wanted to, you could walk. You live nearby. Right? Why? Not because I want to live near a synagogue, because I want to live in a Jewish area. That's how they were. Right? They all kept the Torah. They all lived together. They all followed what they should do. And then slowly we start seeing in the next parshas that starts to fall apart, and they start assimilating, and and then they become slaves. And what happens? And we see now the first example of what the Jews go through as a nation. This is the end of the creation of the Jews. At the end of, really, when we get to the middle of the book of Shmos, the next book, we go from being a group of people, well, we'd say a group of Hebrews, to a nation of Jews. It's a change. And God is at this point about to put us into a crucible, into a fire, to give us the spiritual DNA to make it in the world forever. So that no matter what the world does to us, it just makes us more determined to remain who we are. Right? And that's what we see all the time, and this is where it's about to happen. This is the first indication of the Jews leaving the freedom of Israel, coming into Egypt, choosing to come, but eventually becoming slaves and becoming part of that society. And then when they leave that society miraculously, we now have a new nation. It's like born out of the fire of slavery. And it's an amazing story. But this is the day one of it, right here. So we'll stop with that and continue along. We still have a bit more in this book. Yaakov is still around, and Yosef's life is still around, but very soon they're all going to pass away. And we'll start meeting our next lineage of people, which would be about 3 generations later, which would be Moshe. That'll come up very soon.
I didn't realize the closeness of it.